evening. I'd like to call this meeting on the sufficiency of the East Quogue Village Incorporation petition to order. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Thank you for coming out this evening. I'm going to start the meeting with a brief statement. I like to read this exactly as it appears, as we're in, this is a...
Can you speak into the mic?
All right, so I'm going to read a statement. This is a prepared statement on July 1st, 2019. A petition was filed in my office seeking to incorporate a new village of East Quogue. This is the second petition filed in furtherance of that effort. Much like before, this hearing is being held today for the sole purpose of enabling me to determine whether the petition is legally sufficient. Therefore, does this stop? Yes. Therefore, can you hear me? I'll just talk loudly. Therefore, any comments you may have today should be limited solely to the issue of whether the petition meets the village law's statutory requirements. To assist you in that effort, we have prepared and made available a list setting forth the requirements. Whether you believe that the incorporation of the village is a good thing or not is a topic beyond the scope of this hearing. While any town resident or within prescribed limits, his or her designee, may speak today on this subject, the law will not permit me to consider any comments or objections unless they are in writing. Accordingly, anyone giving only oral testimony here today will also be given an opportunity to sign his or her transcribed testimony prior to the time I render my decision, so that it may be considered by me in making that determination. Anyone is allowed to speak, but the law only allows me to consider testimony or objections from residents qualified to vote for town officers. You may notice the absence of the rest of my town board colleagues. That is because the law dictates that only the town supervisor shall hold the sufficiency hearing and thereafter make a determination. The law further requires that I issue a determination on the sufficiency of the petition within 10 days after the conclusion of the hearing, either today or within the next 20 days, if I feel additional time is needed to take more testimony. Please make every effort to keep your comments limited to those that the law allows me to consider, and respect that this is a hearing for me to hear objections and solicit testimony with regard to the sufficiency of the petition that has been submitted. My role is not to answer questions, debate, or opine on the merits of incorporation, nor to discuss the advantages or disadvantages of incorporation. I will afford each speaker 3 minutes to make their comments known. At this time, Deputy Town Attorney Kathleen Murray will enter certain documents into the record. When she is finished, I will call the names of each individual who has signed up to be heard today. If you have not already done so and you wish to speak, please fill out the form at the table at the entrance. All speakers must provide their name and address at the outset of their remarks. Kathleen?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. At this time, I'd like to enter into the record 4 affidavits of publication from the Southampton Press, evidencing publication on 2 dates, that is July 18th and July 25th. 2 affidavits of posting, one from Code Enforcement Officer Michael Chi and one from the town's graphic supervisor, Colin Jones. A copy of the public notice and a copy of the check accompanying the petition.
Thank you, Kathleen. I can't tell whether this is being amplified or not.
It is.
You are able to hear, and in the back you're able to hear. Charlie, do we have a microphone for the speakers as well?
Yes.
I'm not seeing it?
It's up there.
That's it. Okay, perfect. All right, so we can get started. Again, as you know, this is the second time this process, this is really the second petition I've heard. The first petition I deemed to be insufficient because I found that one of the requirements was a list of regular inhabitants, and the law required that list to be accurate. I determined I did not meet my test for accuracy and denied that petition. A new petition was filed, and that brings us to the hearing tonight. All right, so I'm going to take these in the order in which they were received. They're numbered. The first speaker is Albert Algier.
Supervisor Snyderman and members of whoever here.
Put it right in your mouth.
I have, my name's Al Vergeri. I'm the president of the East Quogue Civic Association, and I reside at 28 Indian Run Road, East Quogue, and I am able to vote. I have a objective to the petition written out. All I would do is hand you copies of it and hand copies to everyone on the board. So I have 3 copies here now.
No, because he's gonna talk into it. He's gotta talk into it.
I'd like to add to this, Fergie, is
Nobody
that
wants to work with us.
there are many inadequacies.
You gotta talk into the mic.
Private to this, many people signed this petition originally and claimed they never signed it even though their names appeared. I think we addressed that the last time, I'm not sure we did, but we have the same circumstances here. We have the supervisor making decisions for East Quogue, and we haven't seen the supervisor in East Quogue for a long time. I thank you for your time.
All right, next speaker is Karen Quogue.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Murray and Mr. Schneiderman. First of all, thank you all for being here tonight, and a thank you to the over 700 people who signed the petition proposing a vote to incorporate East Quogue. I am one of the members of the East Quogue Village Exploratory Committee, and I stood in front of the post office, Goldberg's Bagels, and the hardware store to gather signatures. Some days were a little cold and wet, but we made some friends, we got to know our neighbors, and we met a lot of people in East Quogue. We discussed the process of incorporation, and we answered questions and concerns. We found that people who knew the facts were overwhelmingly in support of our endeavor. Okay? The benefits are many. As a village, we would have true local nonpartisan representation from an all-volunteer government.
I'm sorry, I understood that in order to speak, you had to have an objection to this petition. This
That is-
seems to be...
You're interrupting the speaker.
Yes.
I'm sorry, would you please be seated? Kathleen?
But what are the rules? I mean, I have something
No,
to say
she's
too.
not.
Anybody can be heard. The supervisor can only consider the comments that are on that sheet.
But this is not an objection. She's kind of
I understand,
the group that
ma'am.
wants to...
Anybody can be heard. The supervisor may only consider objections. Do you
Oh, I see.
understand
So
that?
what this nice lady says is not relevant.
That will be determined.
Well, actually, I think it is relevant.
So, can you please allow speakers to speak
First
uninterrupted?
Amendment.
This is very unfair, so.
First Amendment?
I'm not going, I'm sorry that
Thank you.
your
I appreciate that.
your comments were interrupted. Please,
Okay.
no one do that again, please.
Thank you, thank you. The benefits are many. As a village, we would enjoy true local, nonpartisan representation from an all-volunteer government. Yes, all volunteer, just like Sagaponack has had since 2007. So not only is it possible, it is likely. The people of East Quogue can task this government with putting the focus on issues important to our community and address them quickly, like the Damascus dump water quality issue and the need for access to public water for everyone in the community. And it costs relatively little to have local representation. High-cost departments like highway, parks, and police would remain with the town. Everything will stay the same except for the creation of our own planning and zoning boards, our own village building department, and additional village code enforcement. This will allow us to keep localized revenues like building permits, utilities, mortgage tax, and sales taxes in the community to improve services and fund the village government. The Village of East Quogue can create long-term financial and comprehensive land use plans that would bring stability to taxes. The residents of East Quogue would have a voice in future development and services. And finally, we have seen how successful villages can be in preserving the community character. Just look at the other 7 villages in our community, in our town. You see mostly volunteer governments. You see prospering communities. You see lower tax rates with greater investment in the community and more favorable development. This is our vision for East Quogue. We ask that the supervisor validate this petition and give East Quogue residents a vote in our future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before I call the next speaker, I do want to remind the audience that this hearing is to consider objections. This is not to debate whether corporation is a good thing or a bad thing for the people of East Quogue. That can be debated. If the petition is sufficient, then there'll be a vote. And I'm sure there'll be very lively debate within the community as to whether it's the right thing or not. But today, just whether the petition qualifies to allow for that vote. All right. Next speaker is Mary O'Brien.
Good evening. I do not have an objection to the petition. I wanted to speak because I have read in the paper or been told by a couple of people that the petition, people felt that they had been pushed into signing it or they didn't understand. Now, I signed the petition, but I signed the petition after seeing the group, the team, in front of the post office, in front of the New Moon Cafe, down by the park, and every time that I saw them, they spoke about it. They gave their reasons. They had a dialogue with me and the other people that were around me as to why we should sign the petition, and I finally signed it. I think that having the petition accepted and going forward with the hearings that will then happen will give everyone in East Quogue a lot more information and a lot more detail into the little questions, the little details that are going to be answered. Whichever way the vote goes, I think East Quogue deserves the chance to be able to vote and to be able to debate this issue. It's going to be so important for the future of East Quogue. I think a lot of changes will be coming down in the years to come, and I think the people of East Quogue really want to be able to consider this seriously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. David Seeley is next.
I'll pass.
Okay. Richard Slows.
I prepared something to say tonight, however, in light of the instructions regarding what the purpose of the hearing is, I'm just going to limit it by saying that I'm here because I'm in favor of the village and would like an opportunity to vote yes for the village if given that opportunity. I participated in the very beginning when the petitions were being circulated. In fact, my wife was one of those that, Supervisor, you objected to. She passed away after she signed that petition. And I think that using that as an excuse for not allowing a community to speak out and vote yes or no is appalling. And I really feel that if at this time you must give us an opportunity. And we can then make the decision and we can then discuss the issues further, but we can at least have an opportunity to make that decision, which my wife won't have, but shouldn't be the reason that you voided a petition.
My condolences on your wife's passing. Next up is Ron Campsey.
Heading over, we did what I thought.
You're good at it.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, and those at the table, for coming to our community tonight. I've lived here for 42 years. Gave it everything I had to make it a community, and it's a proud community. 41 years ago, they had their first firehouse barbecue. That's the first year I was here. And I was telling someone in the elevator before that it was the most beautiful thing to see everybody putting on their go to the party dress, go to the party with their pretty dresses and stuff on, because it was a humble community. It was a community where it was workers of clamming and fishing and carpentry and painting and everything. And I think I told them before, the city folks that came in, the local people didn't like them, and I couldn't understand why they didn't like them. It gave them a place to live 9 months a year with nobody being here. It gave them a job in the summer painting their houses and taking care of their property without having any intrusion. So I want our village to be incorporated. I want the people to have a say. It broke my heart to hear some say that they thought they went to the graveyard and put names on it or whatever. And that hurt me to think that anyone would even think that way in our town. So I'm just telling you, I could not think of anyone ever doing that, so anyone that says that, I feel bad that they go that low. But Mr. Supervisor, I ask that you take a look at everything and give us the best you can do with it. But I think the people of East Quogue have an opportunity and a responsibility to be able to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Ron, and once again, I say this every time, but thank you for your service to our nation.
Mr.
I
Supervisor,
told you they ever got.
can you clarify what you said before about people speaking only if they are objecting to this?
Right, I'm not gonna not let you speak, but I can only consider objections to the petition. So, you know, it's democracy. If you want to be heard, it's okay, but you have to understand all those things that are on the sheet that I was prepared. And I'm only here today to consider objections to the petition. Go ahead, Jessica.
Jessica Insalmaco, 24 Peacock Path. I wanted to just share some thoughts on this paper because I, along with Karen and a bunch of people over there, sat in front of Lopers and Goldbergs and the post office for over the course of about 18 months working on this. And so our process was very straightforward. We got our list of inhabitants from the Suffolk County Board of Elections for the 5 districts that cover East Quogue. That's part of 9, 18, 27, 33, and part of 35, if I'm correct. We sat in front of each of these places. They were nice enough to let us do it a lot of Saturday mornings. Someone would come up and say, "What are you doing here?" And we'd say, "Well, we're looking into the opportunity to incorporate. We're looking at the pros and cons. Is it good, bad, whatever?" We'd give them our information. We had a pamphlet. We would talk to people if they wanted to talk to us. And then, and only then, if they wanted to sign, we said, "Okay, where do you live?" Because that was the only way we could look them up. So we'd open, they'd tell us their address. We'd open up the relevant book. We'd go find, and if they were registered to vote, we'd say, "Okay, you can sign." If they weren't registered to vote, and they said they were eligible to vote, we handed them a voter registration sheet, or sometimes we dropped it off at their house later if we didn't have copies. So we were very clear. We wanted to make sure people were qualified to vote, so that we had a good list of signatures. We also worked really hard to make sure we had enough. So the estimates that we could come up with through the Board of Elections numbers was always somewhere around 3,000 voters, you know, give or take, because the population would change here and there. And so we said, well, we need at least 700 then, because we want to make sure we have plenty of signatures in case someone moves or something isn't accepted or whatever reason. So we did get nearly 30% of all the people in town to sign that were qualified to sign. We are very clear that this East Quogue is not part of any city or village, so it doesn't have an issue there. It is coterminous, number 4, we're coterminous with both the East Quogue School District boundary and the Northeast Fire Protection District boundary. So on the west, we run into Quogue and the refuge, and then on the east, we run into Hampton Bays, and the north into Flanders. And in doing our research, we found that actually most of the Quogue Wildlife Refuge is actually in East Quogue. So then the fifth and last two ones, the proposed territory contains at least 500 regular inhabitants. Like I said, we found at least 3,000 registered adults. There are additional children, of course. And then we looked at every other requirement to make sure we conformed, because we wanted to do a really good job. We wanted to make sure people were proud of the work. And that's why it took so long. It took 18 months. And over the course of 18 months, sadly, about 30 people that were on the list of voters passed away. But most of them weren't signers. Most of them didn't sign the petition. We only had about 4 or 5 who passed away who actually signed it. So we feel like it was a great petition. We made all the standards. We were well over everything that's needed. And so we hope that you will accept this one. Thank you.
Edward Sampson. Edward Sampson.
Good evening. Good evening. First of all, I just want to say that I know quite well the pros and cons of what is being proposed. And I would only ask those who are strongly opposed that this should at least come to a vote. We live in a democracy. I know those that are opposed to this quite well. I've known them for some time. They're friends. But we do live in a democracy. We live in a democracy where you have a yes or a no. And I would urge that we at least bring this to a vote. Thank you.
Okay, next is Alex Gregor.
Good evening. Good evening, fellow residents. Alex Gregor, 8 Lincoln Drive, East Quogue. I'm a signer of the petition. I have no objections. I don't know where I stand on it because I'm still researching the idea, but I do agree with Ed and many other speakers that I think that it should go to a vote. There's so much dividing this country and this community. We need to have a vote and see where we stand, and then we can move forward. We have to close some wounds that are open. I've been following this, and I've been here for 10 years, and I love the community. My sister Gigi was well involved in East Quogue issues, but I can respect everyone. I don't know where I'm on it. My neighbor asked me if I would consider signing it, and I said yes, but I don't know where I stand on it. I'd like to know more information. But I found that if you leave things unresolved, it just continues to simmer and make bad feelings. And you are my neighbors, and I certainly don't want to have any bad feelings with any of you where you stand on this. Please let the citizens have a vote.
Elizabeth Jackson is next.
Elizabeth Jackson, 35 West Side Avenue. As I've spoken at the first time around, I am always looking at the actual details and not just the emotions that some accused us of doing. When the names that we worked really hard to try to give insight to explain that they weren't here anymore, they were classmates and such, we were just flying blind because we came into this process after seeing that there was a posting that there was going to be a public hearing on it. We didn't have as much time to go into the details of the law that's involved, understandably. So it made sense in the end where certain suggestions that we made where we knew were valid hadn't been legally founded enough to qualify for your decision, your determination, and things like that. Unfortunate, but that was the way it was. When we discussed and went into great detail, one of our members went into the detail to look up the obituaries. That's not an easy task. We knew they had died, but we were trying to provide proof because it was important as a detail. It wasn't a matter of being petty. So in that same mind, my original comments the first time had to do with just being concerned as to the effectiveness of the description of how they put down what their list of residents was. The list of current residents, as was spoken to at the podium just now, is alleged to have been provided by the Board of Elections. But it doesn't actually specify, it doesn't include anything in the actual paperwork that says where these names came from, what date they were collected, when they discussed it, and things like that, which is important. Because if they gathered those names at the beginning of the 18-month period, if they gathered them today, things can change. In the new list of residents, the first page I compared, the first name, one of the names was removed, Abondandello, Kristen R. Unknown reason. Added was Robert Abel, 16 Walnut Avenue. Removed, as was previously noted as deceased, were the Teresa and Oswald Adams. Removed was Michael McGee, 7 Halsey Avenue. They randomly switched orders. Again, I don't know who did, but the listing changed orders for the Aguirre, A-G-U-I-R-R-E family. Luz made the bottom of the list. Javier and Sandra were above. They've edited the address of the Adion, Ann and Anthony, to now be 156 West Diana Road instead of 156 Diana Road. The address was also edited for Molly E. Alamia. They reordered the rest of the Alamias. They added, which was noted as a new REG, which I'm assuming was a new registered voter, the Alamo Betancourt, Victor to Turpin, reordered the Aldriches randomly, changed the address of Yasmin, or Faro Yasmin, to now be 13 Sarah Lynn's Way instead of 13A Squires Avenue, changed the Alford's address from 22 Halleck Avenue and 22 Halleck Road to now be both 17 Bay Avenue. I'm stopping there. That's about a page and a half of the list. The point is that I still do not know how they chose to edit. If this is exactly the way that the list was received from the voting from the Board of Elections. I don't know what date it was. I'm just questioning simple case point study logistics, how they made those edits. If they're editing that list on their own accounts of who they knew or who they talked to or who was in valid petition, all that kind of thing, and we didn't get our changes that we had suggested because we didn't have proof, burden of proof and things like that, then I'm just concerned that if this is the list that's going to be used when we go to vote, that we would be at a disadvantage because this list needs to be all-inclusive so that everyone that shows up gets a chance to vote. And whatever we need to do to make sure that all of our citizens are on the list, we need to do that ASAP if we're going to have to go to a vote at some point. Thank you.
Brian Babcock?
Good evening. Just quick note about the getting signatures. I remember running through the snow and rain. It was fun jumping through the puddles. It was a joke. Just a quick note. Earlier, first speaker, there was mention of the supervisor not being in the town of East Quogue. I'd just like to make mention that I walked the streets with the supervisor on many occasions. He helped us with the $10,000 grant to see the beautiful flowers that you see now, and so I would like to thank him for being here for that. Thank you.
Spent a good part of my day working with East Quogue School today on an issue having to do with National Grid. So sometimes you can help a community even when you're not sitting in that community as well. William Kurtz.
Good evening, Supervisor, representatives of the town, fellow residents. I'm against the incorporation. I think we have a layer of government in town that works well. I don't think we have to change it. I think that I'm not sure why this is happening, but nonetheless, if there is a petition that has to be addressed, you have to play by the rules. Now, you ruled last time that there were 35 signatures that were not valid. So that has to be addressed. We would be remiss in not addressing that if that were the case, and it is the case. I'm not in favor of this. I think there are too many loose ends. There's no beach as part of the project. The park, the marinas, who do they belong to at the end of the day? Are they town beaches or town marinas, or do they become part of the village of East Quogue? I think they should be part of the village of East Quogue. Also, you were sued by these folks. They instituted an Article 78. I received a copy of it. I was named in it as well. Where is that? In what state is that? Can you answer that? Well, I mean, I know it's in New York. I mean, is it moving forward? What's the timeline, I guess, is my question.
At this point, the return date is set. At this point, the return date is set for next Thursday, August 22nd.
Louder, please. Louder. We can't hear you in the back.
At this point, the return date is set.
Speak closer to the microphone, they don't have it working right.
At this point, the return date is set for Thursday, August 22nd. We have given that to outside counsel, Dave Ornston. My understanding is it may be adjourned again. I don't have that information as I sit here.
Okay. Now, will we be having a second public hearing on this thing? Isn't that the way it's going to go, or is this the last one?
That will be determined by the supervisor at the end of this hearing.
Okay. Also, Supervisor, you had said, I read, that you cannot determine the validity of this petition until this Article 78 case is resolved. Is that not true?
That's a discussion that I have to have with the supervisor as his counsel. That's not something he's ready to answer.
Isn't it a law?
It's open for interpretation.
Okay, but you did say that you cannot rule on this until the Article 78 was resolved. Did you not?
I think what I said was I may have to hold my determination. I may have to hold my determination until that's resolved.
Okay.
It's possible.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but that's something I will take under legal advisement.
What would determine that?
Legal advisement.
It's not a conversation you can have with you right now.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, Anna.
It's okay.
Klebnica? Is that right?
Klebnikov.
Klebnikov.
Hello, my name is Anna Klebnikov Rinsmate. I live on Bay Avenue here in East Quogue for the last 22 years. I have raised my children here. They have attended the local schools. I am extremely fond of East Quogue. I like the way the village is. I chose to live here. I also believe that I am the only resident of East Quogue and taxpayer in East Quogue.
You're at the firehouse.
Who is also a resident and taxpayer of Sagaponack. And the East Quogue Village Exploratory Committee has touted the village of Sagaponack as the model that they want to emulate. I was a part of the incorporation of the village of Sagaponack. The village of Sagaponack was created as a direct result to a threat. The threat was June Hampton. It was a bunch of wealthy, out-of-town developers who wanted to grab the land from Watermill to Wainscott, the beachfront property. And Sagaponack was created as a direct result of that. I find it very ironic that in this situation, the situation seems to be reversed. Wealthy out-of-town developers want to grab a part of East Quogue, get all their money out of it, and leave us where? I don't know. I like East Quogue the way it is. I have no gripes at all. And to say that taxes are only going to rise $50 a year, you can look at my Sagaponack bill. They will rise many more times than that. The services that were provided before the village was incorporated were single-handedly, they single-handedly disappeared. We have to provide, a lot of the local residents provide a lot of the services. mowing common areas, mowing the graveyard, lighting up Christmas trees. All of this is done locally, individually by residents. For these reasons, I am firmly opposed to the incorporation of East Quogue. I think it's a wonderful town the way it is. I see no reason to change it whatsoever. Thank you.
Once again, this is not a debate on whether village incorporation is a good thing or a bad thing, only on whether the petition itself is sufficient. All right, those are all the cards I have. Is there any more? Oh, I see that there's another card in the back.
Good evening, City Manager.
Okay, Cindy.
I just wanted to, because the 35 signatures were brought up again that were dismissed, a lot of those signatures actually that were found to be invalid, actually a lot of those people actually live here, and two of the names on that list that jumped out at me immediately when I saw the list were Chris Hudson and Kristen Jankowski. Chris Hudson is the president of the East Quogue Board of Education, and Kristen Jankowski serves on the board as well. So I would assume they are registered to vote in East Quogue and can sign a petition. So as there's, you know, to one side to the other, there's signatures that were dismissed that were very, very valid. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So that's it for speaker cards. One more. Oh, one more being filled out.
Mike Moreno, 9 Bedbury Lane, East Quogue.
All right, thank you.
What's a qualified voter?
Are you asking me a question?
Yes.
I'll let the attorney answer. What is a qualified voter?
I can, okay. It's pursuant to Village Law 2-206. For what purpose are you asking me that? Are you asking me that for the purpose of signing
To
the
vote on
petition,
this,
or-
yeah, to sign the petition.
Basically, a person who can vote for town office holders, like myself or the highway superintendent.
So a registered voter.
1 second, sir. 1 second.
A registered voter within the town of Southampton.
No, he's
As
walking.
of, that's living in the proposed boundary. I'll let the lawyer.
Can you make your comment without me having to look through this, or is it necessary?
I just can't understand how we got this far if this isn't very clearly and quickly answered. How could we even be here? You count the people, you don't even know what you count.
Just relax, sir.
Oh, no, I'm relaxed.
All right, let the attorney answer. You asked the technical question.
Well, because there's a difference between a registered inhabitant and a qualified voter, that's why I'm looking,
I'm just, honestly, just curious.
okay, so a regular inhabitant, I'll just read both definitions. I can go through these.
I'm just concerned about what's qualified to sign the petition first.
Somebody who can vote for a town officer. So if you can vote for a town officer in a town election, at your general election, then you're a qualified voter.
Okay.
But you also have to live within the boundary that's being proposed as the
Correct.
incorporated
Right,
boundary.
right. I guess as a primary residence.
No.
No? Okay. These are just questions.
Yeah, no.
These are pretty good questions, right? I'm not, you know, bragging, but they're pretty good questions.
It's not for me to.
I thought that these would be
The question
already
needs to be
answered.
answered. How could you qualify anything
We
without?
went this far down this
The
road
answer
without.
is whether or not you can vote for a town officer. It's on this piece of paper. Whether or not you can vote for a town officer is whether or not you're a qualified voter. Does that answer your question?
I guess so. And that's the same thing for the people who could sign the petition.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. I just would like everyone to understand What would the village government do if Discovery Land sued them for $100 million? If they don't get their way with you?
Who are you talking to? Talk to them, not us.
Okay.
I'm only here to hear objections to the petition itself.
Okay, my objection was the definition of the voters and who's
That's-
qualified to
that's-
sign.
That's something under village law. We don't make up the definition.
I'm not trying to be wise, I'm just trying to get an answer. All right, thank you.
Okay, do I have any more cards that have come in? All right, that's it. Just give me one moment here.
Where's the master list going? It's taking 40% of what? Where's the master list going? 40% of what?
All right, so I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm also going to close the written record as well. So there'll be no further written or oral testimony, and I will make my decision based on anything I've received thus far, plus anything that I received today. Remember,
Why would you close the written record? Why would you close the written record? Leave it open for 10 days.
Why? It's been open for...
People can't be here tonight at 6 p.m.
But they could have already sent something in.
They still can't after this hearing. They still can. Why would you close it? First, everyone's talking about First Amendment rights. Let's have it open here.
You're here tonight.
That's up to, that's my decision.
No, I got it. I got it.
Ay, ay, ay.
I'm going to stick with my decision. We've had we've been open for quite a while since July for written comments. And if people care about this issue, they could have written in or they would be here tonight. So, and we had a lot of testimony, obviously, at the first go-around, too. People were well aware of this. If they had concerns, they knew this process was certainly unfolding and in motion. So I'd like to move this along. So I'm going to close it for all purposes tonight. And I have, 10 days, Catherine? I have 10 days to make my decision, so I'll review everything that was said. Remember, if you spoke tonight, they have to, sign this transcript? Is that correct, to make it official? So, and we will reach out to you so that you're able to do that. So if you did not give us written comment tonight, only oral testimony, to make it official, you need to sign this transcript, okay? And we'll reach out. It's a point of order. I'm not sure what, Robert, just to tell me what you want to say.
Depending on what your decision is in 10 days, what happens next?
Can you do that at the podium?
Okay, so there's two decisions I can make. Either it's sufficient or it's not sufficient. If I find it not sufficient, I will articulate the reasons why I found it not sufficient. If it's sufficient, I will articulate the reasons why I found it sufficient. And then there's a certain day period, dedicated 30-day period where it can be challenged. If I find it sufficient, those who wished I had made a different decision can challenge. If I find it insufficient, those who wish I made a different decision can challenge. Okay, and then if there's no challenge, then and I find it sufficient, then there'll be a vote scheduled for within 40 days of the expiration of that 30-day period.
And if you find it insufficient?
Right, or to conclude, let's say I find it sufficient, but it's challenged. It would then, as soon as that worked its way through the final order of the court, and then 30 days after that. 40 days after that. Okay, and if I find it insufficient and it's challenged and overturned, once again, it's a whole new clock. Okay, and I do have to resolve the issue of the, whether the pending action affects my ability to render a decision on this matter.
It seems like you did already. You just said that you're going to
You know, I'm
render
trying
a
to make this
decision
for
in 10
TV,
days.
man. I can't hear any of
You
that.
said you're going to render a decision in 10 days, correct?
Right, but whether I can release that decision or not is something that I will take under.
Release it?
Release it,
So,
yes.
in other words, you keep it to yourself and not tell anybody?
Oh, come on, bud.
That's, I have to take that under advisement.
Can I just ask one final question with that?
Sure.
Can you go to the podium,
Could
please?
you give me a portable microphone
Go
instead of
to the
talking to us
podium.
like that?
Sir, everybody calm down. There's enough tension in the world right now. We don't need it here in East Quogue.
Isn't this something you should do?
Yes.
No, it's not.
It's really not.
That's why we have a podium.
Sir, you are out of order. We had an opportunity to speak. I'll give you, this is your second opportunity.
It's really not my job.
What would be the next step?
Getting it to
What
work.
would be the
It's
next
really
step
not.
if you
Then why are you here?
find the petition
I'm here to make
insufficient?
this on
Does
TV.
this process of
I'm
petition?
not here to cater to you.
That's the only question I
And we can't predict that, it could.
had. I could.
We can't predict that.
That's a possibility.
It's always a possibility.
If I found it insufficient, there's nothing under the law that would stop those who wish to incorporate this area as a village from resubmitting another petition.
I have a noble just comment to make sure while people are here. This is just the logistics again,
Hold on,
because
everybody can come back up too.
what we needed to figure out was when the vote is, if it goes to a vote, since time will be of the essence, and we are here present to know that that's part of what's going to come up. But if you're not here present, you might not know that there's a 45-day window or whatnot. Should it be ready to go to a vote? We didn't necessarily know before the last process was discussed. It's not going to be at election time. It'll be a special vote, right?
That's correct.
And another part of clarifying would be, if you have registered with the county board of elections and you can register for the town of Southampton voting, you may not be on the exact same roll as the school board vote when you go to vote. So is there going to be a separate list that would be, we could check and validate and verify for this particular election, should it get to that point, so that we know in those 45 days who we need to make sure is on it and who needs to verify with you?
Yeah, the County Board of Elections will, if we get that far, the County Board of Elections will assist us in that effort. There is a 40-day, please stop saying 45, it's a 40-day time frame, and there will be an opportunity for people to come in and inspect the list to see if your name is on it, and if it is not on it, to ask that it be put on there.
Thank you.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.